Hello everyone, my name is Gulnaz Mushtaq and I am MCT Regional Lead from Pakistan. We are having another MCT Regional from Pakistan with us, Mr. Usman Ludhi, who is organizing this Virtual Lab Summit. I very warm welcome everyone who has joined this live summit. As you can see on the screen, this is our second session of the series Virtual Lab Hours. Okay. Uh, we will be hosting our last session of this series, which would be the third session and will be happening on the 6th of August. So go to your first email containing the links to join the sessions and register for the third session if you haven't registered so far. We will also share the link in the chat box for the registration to the last session. Virtual labs are the part of your MCT program benefits. Through these labs, the MCTs can master practical skills in real-world lab environments to improve their instructional skills and add value to their classroom experience. So the purpose is to get well prepared to prepare your students for future Microsoft roles. So moving towards the next slide. Uh, as you can see on the screen, today we are going to discuss about how to register for the GoDeploy labs being an MCT and overview of GoDeploy, how these labs can help you in preparing for your upcoming trainings. And also at the end, we will be having a question and answer session. Today we are having honorable speaker with us, Mr. Gareth Jones, who is Chief Executive Officer at GoDeploy Labs. He is also an MCT regional lead from the UK and also an MVP. We very warm welcome Mr. Gareth. Thank you very much, Gareth, for being with us. And I think you should start your session.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Gulnaz.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Share my screen. So good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. It's quite late here on a Saturday evening, but I think it's quite early there in Pakistan. Excuse me. So I'm Gareth Jones. I am, as I was introduced, I'm the CEO of GoDeploy and have been since its incorporation. And I've been a Microsoft certified trainer for 15 years now, I think. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP in the Azure space. And essentially, I'm here to talk to you around labs and how they can assist you, how we can assist you, and how GoDeploy goes about supporting the MCT community. And given that GoDeploy was incorporated by MCTs, we understand the program, we understand the challenges we have in classrooms, and we try and ease that challenge with some of the functionality and the features that we have on our platform. So first of all, probably one of the most important things you need to do if you don't already have access to the GoDeploy platform is to register and to use the link aka.gd/MCT, and note that MCT is in capitals and that is case sensitive. Access to our platform is free for all active MCTs. There are no restrictions. You get full access to whether it's Azure Labs, whether it's Office 365, Dynamics. We'll talk about some of the other kind of labs that are available later on in the session. Just beware, for some reason in APAC, we sometimes have an issue with our short links. So if you do have a problem accessing that form, feel free to email support@godeploy.it and the team will be more than happy to grant you access. The only thing you need to do is to share your transcript, which has changed fairly recently how you do that. It's actually been made much easier, and I'm sure I'll post a link on how to do that if you're not sure. And it's actually in our, if you go to help.godeploy.com, it's in our guides as well. So really, let's talk a little bit about GoDeploy and what we do and how we actually work. So first of all, we have a global reach, and that's because if we think about the challenge of physics and light and latency, that's one of the issues we'll always have, and that's a scientific problem, not a lab problem. But we have data centers in the UK, USA, Germany, and Asia, and access to literally nearly every location where Azure actually is. And that's because we are leveraging Azure Express Route and Azure One in order to do that. For those of you who are adverse with Azure and understand those technologies, that enables us to reduce that latency and increase the experience that both the instructor and the student gets. So we don't get kind of a lag, and it is, kind of a really reactive platform. And we are really committed to the environmental impact. That's quite important to us. That we have large data centers churning out carbon emissions. We need to put something back into the into our environment as well. That's quite important. So some of the key features we have available on our platform is probably the first thing, and probably the most important thing, is continual updates. We know Azure changes regularly. We know Office 365 changes, Dynamics changes, portals change, commands change. And we have a team of lab specialists who continually keep those labs up to date. So yes, Microsoft have a team, and I think they've outsourced some of that piece to try and keep changes up to date as possible, but that can take weeks and weeks and weeks on occasion. For example, if we talk about Power Platform recently significantly changed, and what we did is went through all the labs and incorporated those changes into the new lab guides. And that's quite important, because when a student does attend the course, they want to get the best experience possible. They don't want to have to really struggle with the challenge of trying to work out why something doesn't work in the portal because terminology has changed or the whole process has changed. And that's something we don't do that 24/7, 7 days a week. We have a cadence of every week or every 2 weeks, depending on the change, and quite regularly we can identify those changes with announcements from Microsoft. So let's say they say we've just released a new feature in Office 365, for example. We know to go and look in the portal and see if that has changed anything else or licensing has changed. So we can kind of preempt those changes and incorporate those again into the labs as soon as possible. And that again enhances your experience as MCTs by not having to, battle with the students to try and get through labs. So that's one of the things we have the ability to, or one of the key things that we offer as a lab hoster. Leveraging modern browsers. So when we talk about the latest Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Opera, they enable us to leverage the latest technologies for like shadowing students, but also gives us some advantages of being able to copy directly from your local machine into a virtual machine as well. We've got phenomenal scale. We need to now. We are seeing a continual demand for labs. I don't think labs are going to go away for some time. I know Microsoft has a shift towards Microsoft Learn, but there are limitations with their sandbox environments, for example. Excuse me. There are limits to if a student can access certain things from their corporate devices. So we're still seeing that demand. We can host custom labs as well, and that's not just, so let's say somebody wants to do maybe even a Server 2012 lab. That's fine. We can create those custom labs, but also being able to pick and choose modules or lessons from particular courses and incorporate those into one for maybe a particular customer need. That's also a service that we provide for MCTs and learning partners as well. One of the big things for me as an MCT has always been trying to make labs as real world as possible. And I feel sometimes there are occasions where the students have to do things in labs that don't make sense. And I remember the old Office 365 course that the first time I ever was kind of revising or practicing for a delivery on that. I didn't know what I was doing. I had, it wasn't being explained to me. And if I didn't understand as an MCT, I'm not really sure how a student would either. So what we've done is kind of incorporate things like domain names and certificates that are, more real world and have access to public IPs rather than having to do crazy things with DNS. It just gives a better experience for the student. In terms of our service level agreement, we're proud of our SLA. We seldom have issues, and when we do, we can, because of our global scale and reach, we can turn off one data center and migrate to another if we need to very quickly. And we continually invest in our platform. It never stops. And by the time we've finished one project, we're starting another. And again, trying to get the best experience for the student at a reasonable cost is pretty important to us. And being able to incorporate Azure, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365 tenants directly into our platform is pretty important as well. Because to sign up for Azure passes or to sign up for Microsoft 365 trials is a bit of a task. And I've seen some classes take all morning sometimes to be able to get an Azure subscription with an Azure pass, but also I've also seen it done quite quickly as well. So it depends on the class, and it depends on that the experience in the classroom, I suppose. But also, Microsoft over the coming months are going to remove Azure passes in its entirety, with the exception of one or two courses where it is technically impossible to do so because the way that the Microsoft Azure platform works from a tenant perspective. So, and what we'll see from that is essentially a shift to all Azure courses and Azure labs being moved to an authorized lab host, whether it be us or a competitor. And the advantage of that is that we have service level agreements with Microsoft. We have service level agreements with multiple CSPs, which enable us, when something goes wrong, we can go and we can go to Microsoft or we can go to our CSP and say, this isn't working, and we've got an SLA with them, you have an SLA with us, we can get things working. For example, I think at the start of the pandemic, when Microsoft removed access to all Azure passes, that was just tough. Or the Azure Pass, Microsoft AzurePass.com website doesn't work. It is literally kind of a tough, there's no SLA there. So it is quite important, that they have that shift to the lab hoster. So, and we can come back to questions on that later on if people do. But I think what we should probably do is a little demo of our platform, which makes it a little bit easier for people to understand how our platform works and what it's about. So I've gone to our homepage, the lms.godeploy.it, and I'm just going to kind of show you around this. What we can do is we have a couple of ways in which we can register. We can just register with some simple details. We don't ask really any personal information, and we certainly don't share that personal information. We only ask for first name, last name, email, a confirmation of their email, and what password they'd like to use. And then they agree to the terms of use and privacy policy. Alternatively, the student can use their Microsoft account if they wish. And depending on which one they choose, they can always, excuse me, they can always go into always go into the settings later on and change and link their account. So if they want to use their Microsoft account rather than use their just their standard LMS login, or vice versa, they got the ability to change that if necessary. So once they've done that, they can log in. So I will just log in as a demo account. And obviously I've got access to all labs, but essentially a student would need to, they wouldn't see any of these labs here. They would just need to register for another lab. And when a learning partner purchases labs from us, they receive a key. You don't have to create a class. You don't have to set up instructors and associate them with the class. I think one of the most important things for me when we designed the system was making it as simple as possible. And so literally the student just enters it's usually a 6-digit code. They click register. I know that code's invalid, so I just made it up. And then they will see the tiles available for them to go and be able to launch a lab. So let's go. I go and search for it. Yeah, let's launch a lab. Whilst this lab's launched or launching, I'm just going to flip to another screen or another tab, which I've already got a lab launched. And we can see here some of the settings that we have available. So I've got the ability to, this lab only has one virtual machine, but we have the ability to switch between multiple virtual machines if multiple virtual machines are required for the lab. We can send commands to the virtual machine. If on occasions the virtual machine becomes unresponsive for any reason, we have the ability to reconnect to the VM. So this re-establishes the connection with the virtual machine on our platform. And we've also got the ability to manage the power options. So I can power the virtual machine off if it's required for the lab, or power it on if I did power it off. If let's say I got a blue screen or I had an issue with the virtual machine, I can restart the machine. And let's do that. Let's just show you how that works. And the last option here is to reset the gateway. Behind or underneath the hood here, if a virtual machine or a lab requires internet connectivity, behind here is actually a little router, which is specific to this individual login or user. And if for some reason internet didn't become, or internet connectivity was unresponsive, then we do have internet connectivity in this lab. I can always restart the gateway. We can just prove that's actually happens. So if I continue to ping Google, for example, and let's now go and reset my gateway. You see now I've lost connectivity because that little virtual machine, that router in the background is actually rebooting. And it's already rebooted, and we can see now I've got internet connectivity again. So that's just a top tip from me. If you do use our platform and you do lose internet connectivity for any reason, you can do that. We've got the username and passwords integrated directly into the lab environment as well. So this virtual machine logs in automatically, but if I sign out and send the control and delete command, and I click the password, it logs me in automatically. This lab requires Azure credentials. So we mentioned the removal of Azure passes. So we've granted specific access to Azure here and have credentials built in. So if I open a browser, and I go to the Azure portal, and again, you can just simply paste my credentials in. And this is what we call our cloud share offering. Other lab hosters have different terminology, but so you're aware, this is our cloud share offering. And so you're aware, this lab, let me check. This lab requires me to manage virtual machines. So if I tried to go and deploy a SQL database, I can pretty much guarantee you're not allowed to do that. And that's because we limit what you can do. Yeah, so we have to pay for the Azure consumption as part of our cloud share offering. And we restrict in the lab, we restrict you or restrict the user to be only to be able to do whatever the lab prescribes. Okay. So be aware that if you do launch a lab and try to do something else, it's not going to allow you to do that. And so if let's go and try and create a SQL database, because I'm not supposed to do that in this lab. You can see I don't have permission to create a server. Okay, so if you get that error or you see the permissions error anywhere, it's usually because you're not supposed to be doing that in this particular lab. Okay, so just so you're aware of that. So we also have the ability to pre-create resources as part of our cloud share offering. And what this means is that if we have a look here actually at resource groups, we can see we have some pre-provisioned resource groups. I don't think for this lab there is actually any. No, there's no actual resources been deployed, only 2 resource groups. But if you did require resources for a lab, it will tell you when those resources are deployed. And there are sub labs that require, you will need to wait an hour, even longer in some cases, for hundreds of resources to deploy in some of the more advanced labs. Some of the tools, as we work our way down in the lab environment, we've got the ability to go into full screen mode. So that removes kind of the browser title bar and favorites bar. You've got the ability to take a screenshot. So if we did have an error or we wanted to maybe create a lab guide, we can just take a screenshot and it downloads automatically for us. We can paste into the virtual machine. So I'm just going to copy this information here. Let's go and open up a notepad, zoom in, and I click on paste and just paste that data in for me. Okay, so if you've got your own command you want to run or demonstrate something as an MCT, you've got the ability to do that as well. And finally, exit the lab. You can see here on the exit, I've only got the option to end. With any cloud share lab, you cannot save the lab. Okay, there is a timer here, which is usually more than generous of the amount of time the student requires to carry out the lab actions. Okay, so once this timer reaches 15 minutes, it will ask you if you want to extend. And when you click extend, it will extend it for another 1 hour. And you can do that up to a maximum of 3 times. So essentially for this lab, I think you would then end up with 4.5 hours in total to be able to carry out the action in this lab. And it shouldn't take anybody 4.5 hours to do that. And then we have the VM narrator for those with disabilities. It will read what the virtual machine or read out what screen the virtual machine is showing. And the final option we have here is the enhanced mode. And enhanced mode changes the virtual machine, excuse me, to use the entire real estate that's available. And we can move this. So let's say I move this. There we go. You see how it will resize for me. Finally, you can submit a support request. This just takes you to the form that you complete and enables you to submit a support ticket to our support department. If we move on to the lab guide, the lab guide gives people the scenarios. We have a couple of options at the top. When there are multiple labs as part of a module, you'll see a drop down. It will just flip between one and the other. We've got the option to open this in another window. So if you're lucky enough, like me, to have multiple screens, I can open up this and I can move the instructions to a different screen. And when I'm finished, I can exit and it basically pops the lab guides back into the left-hand side pane of the lab environment. We've also got the options to show or hide screenshots. Some people like the screenshot functionality, some people don't. I prefer to see what I'm doing. We can see when the screenshots are enabled, we see them, and we can always enlarge them just by clicking, and clicking out of that screen closes them. Another thing we have which is quite distinct to our platform, is we have all of the sign-in instructions. You don't have to keep flicking between the tabs. We have them all built into the lab guide. Similarly, we also have everything the student needs built into our lab guides. So when we've pre-created a resource group, this resource group in this lab guide is the resource group that was deployed for me in Azure. So again, making the lab instructions even more clear for the student rather than it's the resource group you created. It's trying to ease students in and make life a little bit easier for them. Yeah, and we have all of these links are pastable. So if I create virtual network, create a virtual network. Again, the name, I literally click that link and it pastes that directly into the virtual machine for me. Again, removing or reducing the student error because some of these names, or on many occasions, actually, the names are really important as part of kind of follow-on labs. So if they've gone off piste and done their own thing and changed the naming conventions, they may struggle. Okay. And so yeah, that's kind of an Azure lab. If we flick back to the lab I launched earlier in this demonstration, we can see it's similar, but this time I have Office 365 credentials, and so I've got the ability now to, and actually I have multiple virtual machines available to me as well. The lab guides are similar. But yeah, we can provide those tenant credentials as well. Okay. Again, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can revisit those afterwards. But Usman asked me earlier, prior to this call, about MOS labs, and I know there are no. It's a difficult question to answer or a difficult subject to approach due to the fact of when it's a Microsoft official course, there are one set of courseware, one set of lab instructions, one set of virtual machines. When we look at the Microsoft Office Specialist space, one of the challenges we have are so many authors have created different content. That's not to say we can't do it. As you can see on the screen, I have an example here of an Office 2019 course or lab environment that is used for a particular course for a particular customer of ours, that they've got the files on the desktop, they've got all the applications installed, and so absolutely we can host Microsoft Office Specialist Labs. That's something you'll need to reach out to support at. So the email that I showed you at the start, support@godeploy.it, and put that individual request in order to be able to get access or us to create those labs for you. But absolutely, we can host MOS labs. We know, or MOS environments, we know they're important. We know the community needs them. I think myself more than anyone needs to learn how to use Office properly. But absolutely, we can definitely do MOS labs. So what's our future? What's our roadmap for GoDeploy? Well, it'll be all about the integration of Microsoft Learn and trying to make the user experience as easy as possible. We know there's a big shift moving to Microsoft Learn. We know there's multiple places and multiple things that we have to do in order to get the classroom up and running on a Monday morning, whether that's Azure passes or 365 credentials or lab logins or Learn logins or skill pipe codes, or so it is a little detached, and that needs to be a little bit more cohesive and easier in the classroom environment. But you know, we are committed to doing that with Avata and working with Microsoft on that. To provide additional vendors, actually, we do already have Google Cloud Platform and Amazon Web Services on our platform now, and they're proving really popular. Something else we can also do, which no one actually, we've not found any other lab hoster that can do this. We can have if we just go back to this screen, we can have a lab that has Azure credentials and AWS credentials and Google Cloud Platform credentials. So let's say you wanted to do a lab for, and I was writing one the other week, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Well, that's awesome because you can integrate GCP, you can integrate AWS, you can integrate Azure all into Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So that lab is a really cool experience for the student, that they've got credentials for or accounts for all of them, so they can attach all of those 3 different vendors into Microsoft Defender for Cloud. From a solutions perspective, we change and we shift really fast as part of our agile development cycle, and that's pretty important because gone are the days where Microsoft used to give us, you know, kind of 6 months notice of something occurring. Instead, they kind of give us 6 hours, and so we have to pretty much, you know, turn a really tight circle to be able to accommodate those changes. And so that's important to us. And one of the other things we do as well is to ensure the latest versions of courseware are available as soon as possible. Because what Microsoft tend to do is they will release a new version or iteration of the course on a Friday, and they'll issue the virtual machines to us on the Friday with the view to the course going live on the Monday. Now, in some cases, that's easily achievable. But in other cases where it's a little bit more complex or a lengthy course that we've got to test and validate, that can take a little bit more time. But we promise to get those to market, you know, within a few days. We can't guarantee, like, kind of for that Monday, literally due to the amount of work that is. But yeah, you know, that's a real challenge we have now, that we used to get way more advanced, way early access to the environments and to the lab instructions, for example. Now we don't, unfortunately. So it's a bit of a tighter time frame for us. And our customer service is second to none. Hopefully some of you do use our platform and will be able to back me up on that. But we do pride ourselves on our customer service. That's pretty much it from me. Does anybody have any questions? And actually, Asman, I wanted to, you did ask me, you did say you'd been asked about legacy courseware. We are committed to still providing, or legacy labs, I should say. We're still committed to providing legacy labs, but there's a limit of that. If you ask for a lab which is legacy but impossible to achieve, for example, Skype for Business Online hybrid connectivity was a lab. It's not possible to do that. Teams replaced Skype for Business a long time ago. So the answer to that question is no. That would be a stupid request. Nobody could do that lab. But if you asked for, and we have been asked for, Windows 7 labs, we can still provide them. They still exist. They still work. So if people are still teaching Server 2012, if people are still teaching Server 2016, those labs are available and will continue to be available on the GoDeploy platform for some time. Well, Naz, did we have any other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Gareth, for the wonderful information. We have a couple of questions. Sure. As I am seeing that a few of them are the questions and a few of them are concerns as well. So here I am having a question. If we have a custom class that requires certain modules, can you briefly explain the process of how we would request that?
Absolutely. It's a pretty simple process. So let's say you wanted modules 1 and 2 from course A And then modules 8 and 9 from course B, you simply just email our support channel, say we would like a custom course. There'll probably be a process of having to, work out the pricing for that. But it's as simple as just emailing our support channel, who'll speak to our build team, and it can be done. Some of those requests are done in seconds because it's so simple to merge these courses on our platform. Others that may be a little bit more complex, but simply email our support channel, who will be able to guide you on that. It depends on the complexity of your request, depends on the timescale and the price, I think, is the caveat I'll have to put there.
Yeah, thank you. I just have shared the support email in the chat box. If somebody has having some concern about anything, they can email to that email ID. Okay, we are having another question. I have access to the GoDeploy lab, but still need Azure Pass for labs with Azure. I think this is something like he is going to say that he is having the access to GoDeploy, but he is not having the access to some Azure passes. So in that case, what is going to be done? Yes.
Okay, so we don't provide Azure passes. So if a course requires an Azure pass, the Azure pass is provided by the learning partner for the student. Okay, so I think a lot of the SC courses, so SC200, SC300, SC400 require Azure passes, the same as the AZ140, which is the Azure Virtual Desktop course. Microsoft still provide Azure passes for those, and the learning partner provides those Azure passes. As MCTs, I can't remember the link off the top of my head. It's vouchers.cloudapp.net, I think, /vouchers. We can always put that in the chat later on and follow up with that. But MCTs get their Azure passes from the MCT Azure Pass process. Students in class, if the course still requires an Azure Pass, the learning partner has to provide those.
Okay. So another question is, we definitely need sandboxes, especially for the Power Platforms like Power Apps and Power Automate, regardless of what their employer licensing offers. I think this is some concern the person is going to discuss.
And I'm not a Power Platform expert, but what I do know, I'm not going to do a live demo of something that I'm not confident in doing, but I know if you try and create 2 sandboxes in Power Platform, it won't allow you. The licensing is you're only allowed 1. And actually, with the Office 365 credentials that are supplied, as long as you follow the lab steps, they work. They do. But when people create multiple sandboxes and multiple trials, it won't work. And that's a limitation that you can bring up with trainingsupport.microsoft.com. That's not something that we, that we limit. That's something that Microsoft limit as part of those trials.
Okay, we are having another question. Can MCTs have access to work through labs, and practice for new exams, or to prepare for delivering training? I think the person is asking about whether these labs are for delivering training or just to practice the exam.
Both is the easy answer. Yep, go and use it as much as you like. So if you are, maybe a Power Platform expert right now, or an Office 365 MCT, and you want to go and learn Azure, then go and launch an Azure lab and go and practice. That's why we offer you free access. Absolutely.
Okay, I think the person is asking about the permission. Do we have the permission so that we can use these labs while training the student, or is it for our own purpose, for the practice thing?
Both, like I mentioned, both.
Okay, so that's good. Okay, another question is, as I know, purchasing the course are from the courseware marketplace, and it has to be done by the MS partner, Microsoft partners. can it be done by the MCTs themselves?
Yes, MCTs can purchase courseware. They've always been able to do so. They don't benefit from the discounts that learning partners receive, but yeah, MCTs can purchase courseware, and when they purchase the courseware, they can purchase the labs. Another option is, again, I'm not an expert on this, but another option you have is to become a MAPS partner, and I think it's Microsoft Action Pack partner with learning added on, and I think that's changing slightly with the new Microsoft Partner Program. Again, it's not my particular field of expertise, but I know you can become a learning partner to be able to purchase labs as well, and then you do receive a discount.
Okay. A few are asking about the process of sharing the transcript link. I think they are asking the process.
Okay, can we share that link afterwards? Because I'm not sure what that is at the moment.
Yeah, when someone is going to register for the GoDeploy labs, and while registration, the form is asking about the sharing the link of transcript. I think this is all about that.
Yeah, so the process has slightly changed. Like I mentioned, if you go to help.godeploy.com, the new process of being able to let me try and find the link. There is a new process to be able to share your transcript. I've put the link in the chat there, Usman, and
sure.
Is that okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
The process is easier than ever, actually. So with the migration to Microsoft Learn, we can't complain. It's a really cool, new, easy, simplistic way to do it.
I know it's very easy because now Microsoft has moved everything on Microsoft Learn, and if you log in to your Learn account, and if you go to the right top of the option where there is your profile picture, and if you go to the certification tab, and you can see there, you can see the certifications and your transcript link as well. If you click on that link, you can see the link. If you click on the transcript option, you can see the link over there, and that is very much easy way. Okay, the another question is, can the labs be saved for the future use?
So, like I mentioned, cloud share labs cannot be saved because they are consuming resource in Azure. But for example, this MD 100 course, which they are, all of these labs here build on each other. Therefore, if you look, when I click on the exit lab option, I have the ability to save my lab, which then puts my lab saved in a save state for 4 days. And you can see I've got 3 days, 23 hours left now.
Okay.
And then when I want to return to the lab, just click return.
Okay, the another question is, can we split the screen while doing some labs?
Sure, as I demonstrated, you can pop out the lab guide and reduce the bar on the left-hand side, so you've got more of real estate if you've got 2 screens. So absolutely, yes.
What is the price plan for the labs of Microsoft certification training?
That depends on the amount of virtual machines that you used. If it's got Azure included, or it's just an Office 365 lab, that you need to reach out to the support channel I can't read every single price. I would be here for 2 weeks, but yeah, that's one to reach out to support for. Okay.
Another question is, I think this is some concern. In some Azure courses, it is not mentioned in the instructions that the resource group is already created, and the trainee tries to create it and does not realize why he or she cannot perform the operation?
Okay, yeah, that's a good point, actually. I think in the majority of our labs, we remove that instruction. So if I'm just going to share my screen for a second, Golden, so they can see.
Sure.
They can see this. If you notice, there's nowhere in the first part of this exercise does it state go and create a resource group, and I suppose that is with first of all, we've removed that instruction so students don't get confused. But secondly, I suppose that's something to bring up with kind of as classroom management, and that's important. On day one to explain the process that, or when when we're talking about resource groups, which would be on a very early module of any Azure course, I suppose, to just explain that the resource group has or will be deployed automatically for you. And I think that's the way I still teach, and that's the way in which I approach that challenge in the classroom. And yet there are some courses that do require get a full subscription on our platform and do require the student to create a resource group. But I hear that's just a shift that we have to ensure the student understands that normally you would, but this has been done for you.
Perfect. There's another question. Is there any restriction on number of times labs can be launched or redo, and can guide be downloaded so that it can be open in another screen?
Okay, so to answer the first question, for instructors, there are no limits on the amount of times you can launch any lab. For students, they get a limit of 5 attempts. Now, as an MCT, and I have 2 hats. I have to wear sometimes a CEO hat for GoDeploy and an MCT hat, and I'm going to wear my MCT hat for this one. If a student needs to do a lab more than 5 times, that's a concern for me. What haven't I done correctly? That the student has to keep continually practicing how to create a virtual network, or how to create a virtual machine, or how to set up Azure Active Directory Sync, or create an app in Power Platform. So yeah, I hear that question, but yeah, the limit is 5 times, but no limit for MCTs, only for students. And the second part of the question was, sorry, remind me, Gulnaz. It's popping up. Yeah, absolutely. So you can pop out here. You can pop out the lab instructions. Yes, effectively, you could download these. Some of them are. I'd be careful because some of them are proprietary of GoDeploy. I'll probably show you that in a second. Is there any other questions? Was I just?
Yeah. Someone is asking about regarding the code. How will we get code that we were asked to key in to start the lab?
Okay, instructors do not need a code. So if I end this lab, and I go back here, we will see register for another lab. Note for instructors, contact support for access. So I've already had a Teams message from our support channel saying we've had lots and lots of MCT requests in the last hour. Are you doing a speech? Yes, I am. And so they're aware and they're working on that. You will not need to enter a code here. Okay, you will see exactly what I see here once you've been granted access to the platform. So you just simply search and you'll have full access. So you don't need to enter any codes. You'll have access to every single Microsoft official lab.
Okay. I think I'm just looking for some other questions.
Okay, whilst you're looking for questions, I suppose one thing I should mention is that one of the key differentiators of us as a learning partner or lab hoster is the fact that we add additional content. And what I mean by that is, for example, there are no official labs for AZ305. But I actually did the beta teach with Microsoft and said, you know, there are two different types of students that attend this course. There are those who want to do theory, and there are those who want to do the practical aspect. So we went and created these deep dive labs that are associated with the AZ305. Similarly, when we go and look at AZ104, there are some labs in here, like deploying the Azure firewall or inter-site connectivity or on-prem to Azure connections. They are labs outside of the normal AZ104, and they are complementary additional labs that we provide to enhance the student experience. Now, a lot of these labs maybe could not be achieved or within the time frame of the course, but they are there to take away and do in their own time and enhance their Azure skills. So we do that again, you know, because I see, as an Azure MCT, I see some deficiencies, or in our 365 MCT, you see some deficiencies there. And so we add this additional content completely free of charge as part of the, you know, as part of that package.
Okay, somebody is asking about something regarding PowerShell. Can we install or uninstall a different version of PowerShell module?
Absolutely, absolutely. Whatever you do inside of the virtual machine, they are yours, essentially. So when you end the lab, yeah, you can do, you can't do Bitcoin mining and you shouldn't do illegal activity. But if you want to install PowerShell 7.2, go for it. If you want to install the new version of Power BI client, go for it. If you want to, you know, use Chrome instead of Microsoft Edge, install Chrome. It's completely up to you, whatever you want to do. It's about, if you want to make the student experience better, why would we say no? That would be crazy.
Perfect. Okay, I know the answer of this question, but I need you to answer the people in more detail. The question is, do MCTs have access to labs from AWS, GCP, and other non-Microsoft labs?
Yeah, only if you are an AWS or GCP instructor at the moment. At the moment. Now, there's an announcement that will be made over the coming weeks about something else, but I can't announce it yet. It's going to be announced at the European MCT Summit in Zurich in September. So watch out for the GoDeploy social media. You'll be really interested in it, I'm sure. So the answer to that at the moment is no. But watch social media on the 11th and 12th of September, and that answer might change. But I can't say anything else.
Perfect. Another question is, are the labs and lab documentation aligned with the MS exam, Microsoft exams? If one reads the documentation and completes the lab, will they be able to answer all of the exam questions?
Probably not. No, there is a lot more theory. So there's always the theory element and then the practical element.
Exactly.
So if we understand exams the way they work today, you'll be asked theory questions, and then the majority of Azure exams, for example, you'll then have a hands-on lab inside of the exam, which you then need to complete. So to really give you a solid answer on that, if you practice the labs on GoDeploy for, let's say, AZ104, when it comes to doing the exam, you will be confident in doing the hands-on labs element of the exam. Possibly not the theory, because you need to understand the theory.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I always tell my students, that we are here for the training. How you would, how will you practice the labs and all about that. Like the training is a bit different thing from the MCQs and things like that. But yeah, as I can see, and I practice the GoDeploy labs, and I found answers to so many questions. that were okay, I wasn't able to resolve myself. So if you practice the labs, you can see there are a lot of commands and skips and so many things that usually you cannot find from any of the platforms. So for the as Gareth has said that you should for the exam preparation you have to go to the theory part as well. So these are the practical things and that get you well prepared to train your students, and that's what I have experienced. I think we are heading towards the end of the session, and if you guys are having more questions, you can email us, and we will be happy to answer the rest of the part of your questions. And we are just having the shortage of time, and will be definitely answer your questions in detail. You can email us, and I would thank all the people who have joined this session, and a special thanks to the Gareth and to Usman, who hosted this session and who participated as Usman. You can say anything. Do you want to say anything?
Yes, sure. I have one question about SC100. So when the SC100 lab is going to live?
Okay. My background is cybersecurity, so it's quite interesting. I've been through the content. So Usman, I've already said that we've created labs for AZ305, which don't exist. SC100 is, it is so much theory based that it is difficult. It's more concepts rather than technical in a lot of areas. So I am going to revisit that without doubt, and look and see where we can produce some labs. But it is, it's so broad, Usman. It's difficult. I hear your request, and I'd really like to be able to produce something quite quickly for that. But it's going to be a real challenge, that one. But you're not the only person that's asked that question. I just can't give you an answer right now.
Okay, one more question is from someone. When is MB920 live?
MB920?
Yes.
Let me check. It is live.
It is live. Okay.
It is live.
Thank you so much, Gareth, for your time. Thank you so much, all of you, to join the session.
And it was very informative session. Thank you, Gareth, and the folks who joined the session, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
See you in
Thanks,
the
everyone.
next session. Thank you.
Take care.
Good night. Have a good day. Have a good night. As per your time zones.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Take care.